Today, Bitcoin reaches a new intraday high, briefly hitting $52,000. And Andy Baehr of CoinDesk Indices discusses whether the recent momentum for Bitcoin can hold up. Welcome to CNBC's Crypto World. I'm Tanea McKeel. Cryptocurrencies were higher today, with Bitcoin trading at about $51,600 by noon Eastern. Earlier in the day, it briefly touched $52,000, a level not seen since December 2021. Ether also getting in on the gains and jumping to $27.40. Solana, meanwhile, climbing to $116. Over on Wall Street, Robinhood got a boost after reporting fourth quarter earnings. The company raked in $43 million in crypto revenue and saw monthly active users grow. The stock rose more than 10% by midday. Okay, let's talk about the top stories. Grayscale's head of ETFs caught up with CNBC's Bob Pisani at the Exchange ETF conference to discuss the performance of the firm's Bitcoin ETF.
So the tracking has been really remarkable. We've seen the Bitcoin ETFs really doing a great job of holding very tight bid-ask spreads, tracking the fund's net asset values very tightly, and we've seen a liquidity profile that has been indicative of what we anticipated. We've got a 10-year track record and over 1 million investors and over 20 billion in assets.
Grayscale, of course, is the largest of the Bitcoin ETFs and has faced selling pressure in the weeks after the launch, which are now diminishing. Oh, and if you missed it yesterday, Bob also caught up with Matt Hogan of Bitwise and Rick Edelman of the Digital Assets Council of Financial Professionals. You can watch that interview over at cnbc.com/cryptoworld. Next, SEC Chair Gary Gensler stopped by CNBC's Squawk Box this morning to discuss spot Bitcoin ETFs a month after their launch. He stressed that the agency is still neutral on the investment products, but did speak about his concerns for Bitcoin's ability to be used for fraud and other illicit activity.
Well, this is a field, Becky, that's been rife with fraud and manipulation. And look at all the bankruptcies. And you've had on this set people talking about those various bankruptcies. And it's not just one entity, it's entity after entity after entity. And then investors are just lining up in the bankruptcy court.
Finally, a new report from the Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network says Bitcoin is increasingly involved in cases of human trafficking and child exploitation. FinCEN looked at a period between January 2020 and December 2021 and found more than 2,000 cases of Bitcoin being specifically referenced in cases of human trafficking and online child sexual exploitation. Overall, human trafficking-related Bank Secrecy Act reports grew from 336 in 2020 to nearly 2,000 in 2021. FinCEN also pointed to CSAM, or child sexual abuse material, which made up most of the cases. Now, notably, this report explored data from the height of the last crypto bull cycle before the subsequent meltdown in 2022. Chainalysis released a report last month that said crypto's use in CSAM activity peaked in 2021. All right, turning back to markets for our main story. I caught up with Andy Baehr, head of product at CoinDesk Indices, about Bitcoin's rise to another 2-year high and whether the momentum can continue. Bitcoin is at a more than 2-year high this morning, again, trading at nearly $52,000. Also, that pushed it back above the $1 trillion market cap. Talk about the driving force for this movement and how much of it do you attribute to, recent momentum in the newly trading ETFs?
We're certainly excited to see Bitcoin scrape through $52,000 for the first time since December 2021, which in crypto years is quite a long time ago. To think that only 16, 17 months ago we were dealing with FTX kind of melting down and the market sort of in complete disarray. And now we have this great environment where Bitcoin is 52,000. As you said, the market capitalization of Bitcoin is over $1 trillion. The market capitalization of the entire cryptocurrency market is reaching about $2 trillion. And we have new ETFs, which in aggregate have raised about 11, probably more than that by now, $1 billion in a very short time. And the total amount of money in U.S. Bitcoin spot ETFs is almost $37 billion. So it certainly feels like a really, really strong day.
You and I both know that a lot of times we talk about the price action in Bitcoin and the crypto markets. It's a long-term good story, at least for Bitcoin. and then it's a little bit messier in the short term, or at least just more volatile. Do you think, to what extent do you think Bitcoin can keep up this momentum in the short term? We've all been watching the selling pressure from Grayscale and its ETF that was recently converted from the trust. So now that those outflows seem more out of the way, what headwinds are you watching when it comes to the Bitcoin price action over the next few weeks?
For sure, we want to look at Bitcoin and think about near term, medium term, and long term. In the near term, we're looking at things like yesterday's inflation print and the change in expectations that the market has for when the Fed might cut interest rates. Those got pushed back from kind of the March timeline to May or even past May. But every time that inflation expectations rise, people remember that Bitcoin is really expressed in dollars, and as dollars get weaker, Bitcoin gets stronger, right? So in that sense, Bitcoin kind of stumbled a little bit with equities and other kind of traditional assets at the moment that inflation number came out, but has rebounded quite strongly. In the medium term, we're looking at the halving, which is an event that happens every couple of years, when the reward that Bitcoin miners receive for providing security to the network gets cut in half. This is expected. The reward will go from 6.25 Bitcoin per block to 3 1/8. So traditionally, that's a time when people perceive that the supply of Bitcoin is going to be more constrained, and therefore, with demand the same, prices should go higher. We don't know if that's going to happen this time, but that's what's happened in the past. And then when you look out long term and you think about the properties that Bitcoin has in a portfolio, both its correlation with traditional assets, its kind of future of money and technology idea, more and more people, and now with this broader adoption through ETFs, it looks like it's going to be part of more and more model portfolios that advisors put together in the future.
I want to go slightly deeper on this, and apologies, I'm going to have you reiterate a couple of the things you just said. But, we've seen years where Bitcoin trades like a tech stock, and then we saw last year, that correlation with stocks start to fall and Bitcoin start to look a little bit more like gold. And then after the approvals of the ETFs, I've seen a lot of people out there say, the macro has nothing to do with this right now, which may have been true while we were seeing those initial flows with the newly traded funds. So we know that Bitcoin can serve different purposes and be different things to different types of investors and different people. What if you could give kind of an overarching view on this? How should an investor be looking at Bitcoin right now?
There's two ways to look at it. I think that if you really have a long-term view and can stick with that for a long period, then, we don't make particular investment advice, but we hear a lot of advice that directs that model portfolios might include anywhere from 1% to 5% of Bitcoin as something which provides diversification effect, which also kind of makes a bet on the future of money. And also kind of protects against other kind of macro events that could happen in the future. Many people can't just sit and hold, especially if they're self-directed for years and years. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people got swept up in what happened towards the end of 2022 and sold out of their positions and then missed the rally. So for those people, we really recommend that they try to look at price momentum in Bitcoin, which is a very strong effect. We have a signal called the Bitcoin Trend Indicator, which has done a really good job of indicating when Bitcoin prices are trending higher and lower. And an investment process that uses that signal to allocate will take some of the emotion out of tactical trading and really help reduce the risk and let investors navigate the crypto seasons better. So the Bitcoin Trend Indicator right now is pointing at a significant uptrend. It has spent most of the time since mid-October in that position when Bitcoin was down to 27,000 and has therefore caught most of that rally.
Okay, that's all for Crypto World today. We'll be back again tomorrow. We'll see you then.